Okay, so good morning or afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And welcome to my hopefully relatively short webinar. I don't want to go on too long concerning the new features we added in pressSIGN 11. I'm Fred Thornton, as you may already know. Hopefully you can see the screen. And it's my job to sell and market pressSIGN around the world, based in the UK, via our local dealer network and OEM partners. But I also get involved in the development side of things as well. So, and support, which is probably more how everyone knows me. Anyway, so it's now 9:01 and I think we should make a start because I appreciate you've taken time out of your days to listen, possibly at the end of your day or first thing. So I don't want to drag this on too long, but what I'll say about the things we've done in pressSIGN 11 is, firstly, it's always an organic evolution of the product. Always has been since version 1. We started off 15 years ago with a good product, and we've built on it, added more features, improved some existing features over that period of time. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just making it smoother and easier to use in more places for more people. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've been busy with the last few years. Admittedly, it's not the last few years. We've spent a few years doing this because some of these things have been added as we've gone along, but then rolled up into a version 11 upgrade for perpetual users. So I can change, well, change the slide. I didn't realize I'd animated the slides. We'll look at the new version, or the new client version. So introducing pressSIGN Digital. We'll talk about the new simplified licensing structure. So it's not a change to the product as such, it's a change to the feature set of some options and also how we sell it. We have custom Delta E features. We have the ability to upload to X-Rite's Color Cert scorecard server. We've added support for the Barbieri Spectro LFP QB device. Okay, so we already supported the S3 device, but that didn't support M1 measurement. The QB does. We've updated auto mode to work as a service as well, if you want to. We added PQX support, and then I'll briefly give you a glimpse as to what's coming up in the next few months. Okay, so pressSIGN Digital is actually a rebranding of the old print buyer version. It's a low-cost version for the verification of digital proofs or press sheets. Okay, so it only supports handheld devices and chart readers. So the i1 Gen 1, 2 device, i1 Pro 1 or 2, not the Pro 3. Okay, I think most people know by now that X-Rite have decided not to allow any print quality management application to use the i1 Pro 3 for press hall related measurements. Okay, so if you don't know that, then consider this a warning. It's highly likely that we will never be allowed to support the i1 Pro 3 in any version of pressSIGN. And that's purely and simply because X-Rite don't want us to. Okay, they want us to sell the exact device or the more expensive IntelliTrack scanners in the press room environment. Okay, but pressSIGN Digital supports the Gen 1 and 2 devices. It supports the Konica devices, the new Miro 1, the FD7. It supports the I/O, again, the I/O table for the i1 Pro 1 and 2. It supports the ISIS chart reader. We'll think about adding the Konica Miro 9, which is the newer version of the FD9, which is a competitor to the ISIS, and all of the Barbieri devices, including the new one that we've just added as well. So there are quite a few devices that you can use, handheld devices for spot measurements, like spot or scan measurements with the exact. You've got the old SpectraEye, you've got the 530, the Tecon devices, the SpectraDens, and SpectraJet. All of those are supported by pressSIGN Digital. Now, why did we rebrand the print buyer version? Simply because there was a gap in the market for digital press users. People that don't need all the extra functionality afforded by the more expensive versions in the standard and the pro versions. They just want to be able to take a measurement. They don't need ink corrections because they can't change the color of the ink by increasing or decreasing densities. However, they might want to create curve corrections. Okay, so with pressSIGN Digital, whereas you couldn't with print buyer, with pressSIGN Digital you can create any of the style of curves that pressSIGN can create and export them for digital rips only. Okay, so that's the like of EFI, Caldera, Onyx, Zepra if you're going into a color server workflow environment, or where visual correction curves aren't supported by the RIP, you can actually save out a small device link profile to use to correct the curves in the PDF before it goes through the RIP. Okay, so that covers the in-out analysis of the ink. Okay, it's either right or it's wrong. That's down to your color management. Okay, you can adjust the curves, quite popular with the MPDC option, to get the gray to look okay whilst leaving the color management alone. It's a lot quicker. Okay, now to make life a bit easier for some of the other changes we've made, which I'll discuss in a second, we also increased the number of spot colors you can have in a job in the digital in the digital version from only 2 previously in the print buyer version to up to 12 spot colors, which is the same in the updated standard version. It's the same in Pro. I'll explain that in more detail at the moment. You might think I don't need 12 spot colors in on a digital job. Brand owners, it may not be printed with spot colors, okay, but brand owners still want to know whether their custom spot color is being printed properly or not. So gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of what you can do with the software. It's a little bit more expensive, okay, but then you can do quite a bit more with it. So I think it was a reasonable change. And of course, there are lots and lots of digital machines out there. To give you an example, I was on a Ricoh Pro C9200 the other day, and with a bit of color management, we got it hitting 93% against Fogger 39 target. And the main reason for doing that was because we wanted it to match the indigo that they had sat next to it, and also their two litho presses. And at 93%, there should be a very good visual correlation between the sheets from the different presses. Okay, so in addition, and I'll explain this a little bit more detail in a second, but in addition, you can buy the digital version as a subscription option now. Okay, and all subscription licenses get the extra GPM functionality. So that's support for Pantone Live, email reports on scheduled times. You get the live dashboard, and you can synchronize jobs from your GPM pressSIGN server to any other GPM pressSIGN server, or Shawk's Color Drive, or the new feature, which I'll explain in more detail again later, which is the upload to X-Rite Color Scorecard server. Okay, so there's not, if you don't need all the functionality of the standard version or the Pro version, then the digital version is a much more cost-effective solution. So that's all I'll say about that. Sales have been reasonably good since we launched on the 1st of April. But the whole purpose of this webinar is to make sure that everyone is aware that there are other options that are more cost-effective, while still providing the features that are relevant to the people that need them. Okay. So moving on, the simplified licensing structure. The best way of describing this is that the feature set was relatively top heavy, and that obviously put off some people from buying the product. So to make life fairer, we have, as I've just explained with digital, we've adjusted some of the feature set to make it a more linear progression from one product to the next in terms of features and price. And then we've opened up the subscription options to all of the different client versions that we sell. Okay, so there are 4 different pressSIGN clients and 2 ways to buy them. That's digital, trends, standard, and pro, and those are ordered in price, in ascending price sort. So in terms of pounds, you're talking £9.95 for digital, £11.95 for trends, £21.95 for standard, and £32.95 for pro. That's in pounds. That's for a perpetual license of pressSIGN 11. Okay, that's perpetual, means that it's going to stay version 11 unless you pay to upgrade it or convert it to a subscription license. Okay, but those clients can be purchased as a static product or as a subscription. Okay, and then there are the 4 different subscription terms: 1 month, 3 months, 1 year, 3 years, with 3 years being the most cost-effective way of buying a subscription. I won't go into all the numbers there, but needless to say, overall, if you compare price to just a static purchase of one perpetual license, subscription is always going to be a bit more expensive, in the long term. Okay. However, you're always on the latest version with a subscription, and you get those extra features that I just mentioned with any of those clients. Okay, so the Pantone Live support, the email reports, the live dashboard, the job syncing, etc., etc. So one of the other things we've changed in terms of the perpetual licenses is that they all now include the first year of software maintenance. I can't tell you the amount of times that we've launched a new version and then someone has replied to us saying, hey, we upgraded 6 months ago, can we have the upgrade? And if it fell outside of the free upgrade period we usually do before that that new version has been released, it's a little bit annoying. Okay, so if you buy the software, if you buy a perpetual license of the software, you get the first year of software maintenance free. It's your choice whether you continue with that afterwards. Okay, it's not an evergreen contract or anything like that. It simply gives you an upgrade to a major version if it's released within a year of you purchasing the software. However, if you do continue the software maintenance, it obviously means that you're on the latest version. You don't have to suddenly find extra money to buy an upgrade, etc. Okay. As I've said, all of the clients, Digital, Trend, Standard, and Pro, can now be purchased as a subscription license. Okay, so prior to version 11, it was only Trends and Pro that you could buy as a subscription, which meant, of course, if you needed the subscription version for some of the features, maybe Pantone Live, or you're uploading jobs to a brand owner's pressSIGN GPM server or color drive, short color drive or whatever, then you had to buy the more expensive version. Okay. With this change, it means if you've only got a digital press, or if you've got an Indigo press, and I would suggest the standard version is appropriate for an Indigo, okay, because we can actually treat it a bit like a litho press. We just don't need the extra features of Pro. So we don't need auto mode. We don't need auto scanning devices. We're not integrating with a third-party closed loop system, etc. Okay. The only caveat to that, I'd say, is that if you have an Indigo, one of the newer Indigos with an inline Spectro, that can be integrated with auto mode. Hasn't been done yet because I need a willing volunteer to help me negotiate with HP. But if you've got one of the 100K Indigos, send me an email and we'll talk to HP about getting that data coming from the press automatically so that you don't have to do any measurements at all. Okay, those are all available as subscription licenses. Okay, so you only pay for what you need, which I think is fairer and more cost effective. Now, another thing we've also done is to remove the Trends license from the first Pro client. Okay, previously, if you bought the Pro license, you got Trends with it for free. What that really means is it made the product a little bit more expensive. Okay, so by taking Trends out, Pro is now, the headline cost of Pro is cheaper. Okay, it's about £700 cheaper. Okay, and getting rid of that means we don't need to have additional client licenses. Okay, so previously you bought Pro, and then if you wanted another Pro, you'd buy the additional client license, which is a little bit confusing. Okay, because they were different prices. Now there's just a volume licensing discount. If you want 5 Pros, you buy 5 Pros and you get the volume, the 10% volume discount that number of clients for that product gives you. Okay, so I think it's a little bit more straightforward. You buy what you need to buy and you apply the volume discount accordingly. And just to reiterate at the bottom there, every single client version of pressSIGN can create a job with up to 16 colors, CMYK and or up to 12 spot colors. Okay, so if you're only doing spots, it's 12. If you're doing CMYK plus spots, maximum of 16. Again, we have certain customers around the world that had lots of pro versions because they needed more spot colors in the job. Now they can use the version of the software that is more appropriate to them. Fairer. I think it's fairer, and should mean that we're offering a product that is certainly more cost effective than it's always been more cost effective than any of our competitors, but is now more competitively more cost effective, because you don't necessarily need to buy the most expensive version to get some of the things that most people want. So if you want to do ECG on a Flexo or gravure press or something like that, you don't need to buy the pro version. You can buy the standard version. Okay. And you can buy trends with any of them. Okay, so if you want to do historical trend analysis on 10 digital machines, go ahead and buy 10 digital licenses and 1 trends. Okay, trends goes in pre-press. The digitals go out on the presses so that you can measure the start, the make readies and jobs as they're on press, and therefore you start to see the benefit of the software. The more often you measure, the more often you check the data and do something about it, the more benefit you get out of the software. Yes, it's a bit more work, admittedly, okay, but it means that you're not delivering jobs that are non-compliant with the customer's wishes, and everyone's happier. So more consistent color accuracy, higher color accuracy, happier customers, less waste, more productivity. These are all the things that pressSIGN has offered for all that time, but it will only do it if you use the software. Okay. So understand that licensing structure and feature sets aren't massively interesting from a new feature point of view, but they do change the way we offer the product, and I think it's for the better. So let's carry on. So not all spot colors are created equally. Let's put it that way. Or the other way around is some spot colors are more important to brand owners than others. So you can now create custom delta E tolerances at various different levels depending on who wants it or how often it needs to be used. So at the library level, the color level, individual color level, or the job level, with the top of the tree being obviously that you can treat all spot colors the same in the press target. Okay, and it's a hierarchical structure. So by default, if your press target says we're going to use 3 delta E 2000 for all spot colors, then that will be applied across the board. However, if you then select a color in the library that you've specified 2 delta E on the library, that takes precedence. If you then select a color where you've actually defined it on the color level, that takes precedence. And if it's just a one-off and you only want to do it in the job, you do it in the job instead. Makes sense. Means that we are focusing our energy on making sure that we deliver what the customer wants. Okay. Now, another part of that is to say that sometimes a standard delta E formula is not quite good enough, even at say 2 delta E. Okay, delta E by definition is non-directional. Delta E 2000 is marginally more directional. People think of the elliptical shape of the delta E 2000 tolerance line. If you draw it around the target, it's actually different on a color by color basis. However, sometimes the color shift or the hue shift from one side of the target to the other is too much for the customer. Okay, it's just too much of a color change. So what we can do now, and I'll show you a screenshot in a second, what we can do now is we can actually change the way the formula calculates the delta E. We can actually make the formula more aggressive or more lenient, if you want, on certain characteristics of the LAB. Okay, so if we want to reduce the hue shift, we can change the ratio for the delta E 2000 calculation on the hue component. Okay, and reduce the tolerance essentially on the hue component. Okay, it'll make more sense when I show you a screenshot in a second. So in order to help you decide what is acceptable, we created a color visualizer window. Okay, and this is what it looks like. So I have just the default settings here for a red color. On the left-hand side, we can see the delta E 2000 tolerance line, the white line around the crosshair. That is 3 delta E 2000 at every point on that line. The hexagonal shapes on the right-hand side around the central hexagon. Central hexagon is the target color. Okay. The ones around it are the colors or a collection of colors in those different directions at the tolerance line. Okay, so you can quite clearly see there is quite a big shift from the kind of the northwest to southeast shift, which is of course going from one side of the target to the other on the hue axis. The split screen in the top left of the right hand panel shows us the maximum color shift from one side to the other, which is quite significant at 3 delta E 2000. That's using the standard delta E 2000 calculation. Now on the next slide, what I've done is I've adjusted the hue component or the hue ratio in delta E 2000 to be half what it is normally. Okay, so instead of being 1, it's now 0.5. I've also reduced the tolerance down to 2. Okay, you can still see a color difference from one side to the other, but it's actually, that's a maximum delta E. So now the difference is mostly on kind of lightness, really. Maybe a little bit of chroma there as well. From when you're looking at the hexagons around the outside of the central hexagon, the color change is significantly smaller than it was at 3 delta E 2000 with the standard calculation. Okay, it's quite powerful and a bit scary. Okay, I'll admit that, but it gives you more control. Okay, over what you're going to do, because clearly there's still a color shift at 2 delta E 2000 with that color using my more aggressive delta E 2000 calculation. So it can be used as an analysis tool by the brand owner to decide how their spot color, which is super important to them, how their spot color should be assessed. That can then be shared if they've got a global print management data center. That can be shared across the internet automatically with their print vendors, and it will just it'll be something that gets the printer can use to do the job. Equally, it could be the printer deciding whether that spot color is even possible to print. If you're having problems with a spot color, you can't quite match it. That might be it. Okay, it gives you another level of analysis. An extra feature which not everyone's going to use, admittedly, but takes us from just applying the same assessment criteria to all spot colors to being more nuanced, more flexible, and more accurate, which is the whole point of the software. Okay, so uploading to an X-Rite ColorCert scorecard server. I have to admit, X-Rite are doing quite well with ColorCert scorecard server. It's not a very nice system. It's very basic. It doesn't tell you very much about the job because they generally only suggest that you measure, or they suggest that one measurement on one sheet is acceptable to decide the print quality of a whole job. But they have got it into quite a few brand owners, and as a result, there is a let me rephrase what I just said there. Something is better than nothing. Okay, whether that something is not as good as the alternative or not is another matter. But the aim is to improve print quality, and therefore improve profitability and consumer confidence and all of those brand management things that people worry about from a marketing point of view. So X-Rite have numerous ColorCert scorecard servers. The problem of late has been that in order to upload data to those servers, the printer also had to invest in the ColorCert desktop application. Now, there are other things that are happening in the market in terms of being able to communicate print quality data from one user to another, but those are manual and require user intervention, and of course is a bit of a pain to do. So the purpose of adding the ColorCert scorecard server upload feature is to eliminate the need for a pressSIGN user to have to also invest in ColorCert desktop and all the extra features that requires, because that's extra money, it's more training, it's confusing to users, and we don't want that. So the option now is that you don't have to do that. You can upload data from a pressSIGN GPM subscription license of any client. Okay, so that's digital, standard, and pro. Obviously, Trends doesn't do any measurements, so you obviously need one of the three clients that actually take measurements. But if you buy a subscription license for those, you can upload data to a ColorCert scorecard server without the need to also invest in ColorCert desktop. Okay. It does, however, require, and this is an X-Rite requirement, so whether you invest in the ColorCert desktop license or not, you have to have a vendor access license for each brand that you need to upload to. Okay, so even if you did have ColorCert desktop, you still need to buy that. Okay, the point is you don't need to get ColorCert desktop anymore. you can do it from pressSIGN, and you can do it from the digital version or the standard version or the pro version on a subscription license. Okay. The other thing to really know about that is that at the moment they only accept data from XRGA devices, and that's excluding the i1 family devices. Okay, so we're only really talking about Exact or the IntelliTrax, and that's because X-Rite have sold the idea of device, instrument, God, what's the best word? Inter-instrument agreement to the brand owner. Okay, so generally they want them to be net profiled, and obviously only a very small selection of X-Rite devices can do that. I understand from X-Rite though that it's really the brand owner's decision as to whether they accept only that data from those devices. If they have an open application ecosystem agreement with X-Rite, I believe they can choose whether to accept data from other sources at that point. But I haven't had confirmation from a brand as to whether they've been allowed to do that as yet. Okay, so again, it's a GPM only feature, but we're trying to give users more reason to only use pressSIGN, not have to go and invest in other things, because pressSIGN is the easiest product to use on the market. We've shown that time and time again over the last 15 years. So why use anything else when you can just keep using pressSIGN, click a couple of buttons. It's not a very interesting thing to see. You literally do your job in pressSIGN, and then you go to the file export menu and choose the color cert option. A window opens, you click a button, and then the data is uploaded. So it's not something that is particularly interesting to show as a demonstration. Okay, so slightly more interesting is the Barbieri Spectro LFP QB. We've supported the S3 variant of the Barbieri Spectro LFP for about 6 years or so, but that didn't support M1. The QB does. It also has a UV cut filter and polarization filter, so you can actually do M0, 1, 2, and 3 measurements if you want. It's a very capable device. You have inbuilt apertures ranging from 2, 4, 6, and 8 millimeter diameter. Oh, I spelled diameter wrong. Which means you can measure pretty much any type of print. It's transmissive substrate native support as well. It's got its own illuminant in the table, so you can either do reflective or transmissive. You can do up to 2 centimeters without changing the configuration of the device. It's very, very capable. So for direct to garment linen measurements, you've got films and foils with the transmissive. You've got large format inkjet where the dots might be a very low screen ruling, or screen, for example, with a low screen ruling, large dots, those kind of things. You can pretty much measure anything with it, to be honest. So the support is slightly different compared to the older S3 variant. You can now measure pretty much any single page chart using the QB version. So the support for the old version remains the same. It's fixed to a small and a large version of 1 strip. We haven't changed the old S3 support because it's handled slightly differently. But with the QB, You can create a single page chart of pretty much any patch set using the Barbieri gateway software, which comes with a device. And the reason you have to do it in their software when you're making the PDF is because you need the auto position lines to be added, okay? Because we only support charts with the auto position function on the QB, so there's no manual alignment or anything like that. It's you simply just put the chart on the table, click scan, it finds it, measures it, and sends the data back. It's got a USB or Ethernet connection, and is very good. And it looks like that, which is very nice. So if you're a printer of any of those types of things, large format, screen, film foil packaging, things like that, it is one of the most complete devices on the market. No fiddling with third-party light tables or adjusting the height of the arm or anything like that with the I/O table. It just does everything for you at the click of a button. Okay, so auto mode has been a feature of pressSIGN since version 7. We have constantly updated it to support more data sources, different types of file, the Prinect API to get data from Impress Control, etc. But sometimes things go wrong. Computer gets rebooted and no one notices if they're not paying attention, possibly for months at a time. So no data is being imported. Some people don't like to see the window. I don't fully understand that. It's generally when it's being run on a server and not next to the press where it should be. Okay, and some IT departments have voiced concerns about being the Windows user having to be logged in because it's a security threat. All of those things are answered by running auto mode as a service, which I've created the AMAS acronym, which I quite like. Basically, it means that once you've configured it, it just runs in the background. If you only have one Pro license, which it needs because auto mode is a Pro feature only, as soon as you turn it on, it will log you out. And then you won't be able to log in with that Pro license unless you stop the service. So you'll need at least one Trends license to be able to log in and look at the data. Whether it's on the same computer or not is irrelevant because the license can only be used by one application at a time. But running auto mode as a service means that if you reboot the machine, as long as the machine is on, doesn't have to be logged in, the service is running in the background. Okay. If you log in, you don't see the interface at all. Okay, because it's a service, it's just running in the background. So all of those kind of problems disappear if you're running auto mode as a service. So it's always importing data. It's always running. You have to tell it to stop. So it just irons out a few kinks with some of the feedback we've had from auto mode users. And again, because there's no interface, because there's no thing to show, it's not particularly very interesting to show as a demonstration. There's a tick box in auto mode defaults. So if you're familiar with auto mode, if you tick that box and then click OK, it will log you out and just start running. Okay, and it will use all of the settings that you had set up for the client-based version of auto mode. Okay, it's the same thing. It's just it's running without a window open, but it's running in it as a service. So, slightly more secure, slightly more resilient, because it's always going to start if the computer's on. It's always going to be importing data, which means that you don't have to worry about losing data if someone does something silly like turn the computer off. Okay, so when I was talking about color cert, I mentioned other things that the industry is doing to make it easier to communicate print quality data from one user to another. And that has been the creation of PQX, which is actually an ISO standard, ISO 20616-2. It's a standardized XML format specifically designed for the communication of print quality data. In fact, PQX stands for Print Quality Exchange. And the idea is, again, it's around this idea of not having to invest in 4 different print quality management tools because 4 different brand owners have told you that's what they're using. If everyone supports PQX, which pressSIGN does, then the data can be exported from one system and imported into another. Now, admittedly, that's a manual user intervention. Okay, you have to export the job. Okay, so if you want to export it from pressSIGN, you go to the open job window, you select the job, you click export, you choose PQX. All of the job, all of the measurements will be written into a single XML file. Then you obviously attach that to an email and send it to whoever and say, look, that's the data. You import it into your system, provided your system can import PQX. I believe Measure Color and Chroma Checker do. Color Cert may well import, but doesn't export, I don't think. Remains to be seen. But the simple fact is you can get the data and give it to someone else. Now, from our point of view, if people are going to send that data to us, we've updated auto mode to work with PQX automatically. So you could have people sending you lots of different files, and you simply just drop them into the hot folder and it creates the job automatically for you, puts it in the database and does all the scoring. Now, the last 2 things I've talked about, auto mode as a service and PQX, the reason we've added those is because we think it's the right thing to do. Okay, it's the fair thing to do to make life easier for printers across the board. And following on from that, we're also using it as the basis of our forthcoming Open GPM portal. Okay, so whereas we've added, in the past, we've added upload to Shawk's color drive server, or now we've added the upload to a color cert scorecard server. The same hasn't been true of people sending data to pressSIGN. There are a number of brand owners out there that do accept data via pressSIGN GPM from other pressSIGN users. So in order to be fairer, we're going to create the Open GPM portal, which will allow users of other systems like Measure Color or Chroma Checker or Color Cert to upload data to a brand's pressSIGN GPM server via the Open GPM portal. It'll be web browser based. It will be some form of upload portal where they upload the PQX file, okay, which will transmit it across the internet to someone else's server. There will be a form of licensing attached to that, but it certainly won't be anywhere near what X-Rite are charging for their vendor access license. Okay, a few $100 a year or something like that. Hasn't actually been decided yet, so any feedback people have on that would be greatly appreciated. But PQX, again, not massively interesting as a concept to do a demonstration, because it's just a text file. Okay, yes, I could go into the open job window and export a file for you, and then I could put it in hot folder and into auto mode and import it. Doesn't really tell you much, but these little things have quite a big impact, okay, which is to make pressSIGN more available to more people and be fairer, which is better for everyone. Okay, so those are the main things that have changed in version 11. As I've just mentioned, we'll be implementing the Open GPM portal at some point this year, relatively soon. Another feature that will be going in quite soon is updated password security options and Windows Active Directory integration. Okay, so if you have Windows Active Directory and you want your usernames and passwords in pressSIGN to integrate with the ones in Windows Active Directory, from a security point of view, you will be able to do that. And then hopefully before Printing United in Las Vegas in October, we'll be adding the exact2 support for the new device. X-Rite didn't help by not telling us they were going to launch it. So we've been caught slightly unaware, but negotiations are ongoing, and we should start development work fairly soon. So just a couple of little highlights to tease for the coming months, but that really is it. Oh, but don't forget, before we do questions and things like that, we always update the pressSIGN manual with all the new features we add. Okay, so if you have a question, you're struggling to do something in pressSIGN, check the PDF before you email or call support. Okay, it saves everyone lots of time, because it's mostly in there. You just have to search the PDF for the thing you're trying to do, and generally you'll find the answer. Okay, especially if you're on the other side of the world to us. Okay, an email might be a fire and forget thing, okay, but it means you don't get an answer for 12 hours or a day, possibly. Okay, the manual is very long. It's got lots of screenshots. It's written as a how-to, so the answer should be in there. If you don't find an answer, then by all means let us know, and we'll update the manual and obviously answer your question. But I like to remind people at the end of these webinars, because the amount of time that I spend answering questions that people could answer themselves by looking at the manual would mean I've got more time to do other things. But we're always here to help, and the manual is the first point of help. So please read it and save us all some time. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me this morning. If you have any questions, you are welcome to unmute yourself or send a chat message, if you want. Otherwise, I'll stay on for a few minutes. But otherwise, thank you very much, and we hope to see you using pressSIGN 11 soon.